The role of a technical artist is one of the most in demand roles of the game industry. Technical artists are experts in their field and they get one of the highest salaries in the game industry. But what is a technical artist? What do technical artists do? And how can you become a technical artist? So, I did a podcast with Chirag, who is a lead technical artist at a game company in Canada. And this is the part where I asked him all these questions, and he's going to tell you the answers to this in this video. Also, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, you hit a like, and don't forget that notification icon so that you don't miss any of my content. Next up, Instagram. That's where I am. You can find me tons of tips, tricks, and hacks on game careers, game design, game development. Also, lastly, make sure you're on the Gamer2maker Discord server because that is the place to be. You'll find a community of people just like you who want to make video games. So let's go. So now I'd like to ask you a little bit about, you're a tech artist, right? You're a
That's
technical
right.
artist. So tell us a little about that. I mean, because technical artists are the interface between programming and art, right? So tell us a little bit about, what a technical artist does. What are the challenges? And if someone actually wants to be one, what's the path?
Right. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Technical artists basically they act as a bridge. They bridge the gap between programming and art. They play an extremely important role in production in helping achieve the art goals and the visual direction that are set for the game, while taking into consideration the technical limitations and challenges of the underlying platform. So the responsibilities of tech artists can vary a little bit from studio to studio. It really depends on the size of the team, the kind of tech that's used, the nature of the project, but they typically involve and are not limited to things like establishing the art pipeline, improving the art pipeline, establishing technical guidelines for the artist to follow, developing tools for the artist to make their life easier. You're really serving the artist, authoring shaders, whether it's through a node-based editor like Shader Graph or actually writing code in HLSL or GLSL, managing asset bundles, profiling and optimizing the game. These are all the different responsibilities that technical artists undertake. The four main breakdowns that I would give for a technical artist is there's the art side, which is basically understanding the art disciplines, understanding UI and VFX and 3D, whether it's environment, characters, animation, understanding the DCC software, the digital content creation software is used, the processes of how something is created, and in the pipeline that it gets through before it ends up in the game. All of these things is very important to understand. And when I say familiarity with the software, I don't mean in the sense that to be able to create beautiful art using one of these softwares, but to understand the features, the limitations, how does importing and exporting work, scripting with it for automation or validation. So that's all the stuff that I mean on the art side. On the technical side, understanding the underlying engine. How does rendering work? What are the technical limitations of the target device, the target platform? Having knowledge of coding, whether it's simple scripts written in Python or C# or sometimes more C++ heavy stuff. Authoring shaders again in code. All of these are the technical side. Then there's the analysis part, which is problem solving at its core. Being able to run a bunch of tests, observe, make inferences from that, profiling the game on different platforms, finding bottlenecks, optimizing for performance and memory. This is all very important, and this is on the analysis side. And lastly, I think arguably the most important part is communication or collaboration. As someone who is bridging the gap, it is imperative that you communicate extremely well, whether it is communicating the guidelines to the artists or writing excellent documentation for people to follow, helping artists with their problems. All of these things you have to be able to communicate well.
Let me just pause.
Yeah,
So when you mentioned writing documentation, just give me a
That's right.
rough example of a document. What kind of document would a technical artist write?
Okay, let's say you create a shader for the artist that the artist will then use to be able to create certain effects or something like that. They need to know the shader itself is kind of a system. It allows the artist to configure the shader, set certain values and pass certain inputs and textures to be able to get what they want. So it's important that they understand what each of the properties do, how this property is implemented, what it can be used for. So all of these things are very technical documentations that you provide the artist with that they can then follow to be able to do the job well. And sometimes this really helps also in the long term, because when you have new artists join, when they're doing the onboarding, you don't want to have to go through that process of having to explain everything.
Yeah, just
So
read. It's in that folder. Just read the
that's right.
damn document. Yeah.
You have great documentation, and hopefully that should alleviate a lot of the additional work that comes with having to onboard or explain to people how things work.
Yeah.
Um,
The cool thing is I've realized that if you write good documentation, people love you. People don't like writing documentation. And if you're the guy that is writing a beautiful, concise document that people look at and it saves them time, and it teaches it saves so much time from learning, then people look up to you. They're like, all right, man, this guy. It's a very, very valuable thing for your team. Writing good, clean, precise documentation that other people can refer to and learn from in the game industry. It sounds kind of boring. Like, we are making video games and writing documentation. But if you write a nice, beautiful document,
mhm.
you are going to be a very valuable team member, you know?
It goes back to what we were saying earlier when we were saying demonstrate certain things that they're looking for. This is again one of those things that you may not think about when you're just doing a solo game or whatever, but showing or having some examples of things like that, like having good documentation, it communicates to the employer that even though in your particular case you didn't maybe need to write documentation because you're a solo developer, or you already know your stuff, the fact that you're doing documentation means that you don't have that extra step to learn when you join, and you're already aware that those are some things that we do and that's important for us to be able to produce. So I think it goes back to that conversation. um, but yeah, in terms of how people can get into technical art, typically it's not really an entry level friendly kind of role, and
It's more
the
like a
main reason.
middle to, like, you need about 5-10 years experience later, you can actually kind of merge the two.
Exactly. I think it's mostly because of the amount of like functional knowledge you need to have, and because that knowledge is not easily available. You can't just go to one YouTube video or something and just learn that. So this kind of knowledge that you develop on the art side and the technical side, it comes with years of experience in the field. So the ones that do get into it typically will either be from the programming background or the art background. There's a lot of artists who may be, UI or 3D animation, VFX backgrounds that develop technical experience over the years that allow them to eventually move into tech art. And on the programming side too, you have programmers that may be with the graphics programming background that have a flair for the artistic things and that end up kind of moving towards technical art.